You guys still can't get in?
Yeah, so she can't register because she's a host.
Okay.
Okay, it looks like we're in business. Okay to proceed, Corporate Officer?
Yes, it's okay to proceed.
Good. We have a full agenda, so we'll jump right into it. So good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the regular meeting of the council. Shows where I am. To the committee of the whole for November 2, 2021. Call the meeting to order at 3 o'clock and acknowledge that we are meeting electronically and we're honored together on the unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. We have an agenda today. First of all, ask the council add the stats received from the RCMP. So I'd like to add that to the agenda under 3.1. And then with that addition, I'd like a approval of the agenda. Councillor Crowell, Councillor Ladwig, thank you. All in favor of approval? Thank you very much. I'd also like a motion to receive all reports on the agenda. Councillor Crowell, Councillor Diandrad, thank you. All in favor? And thank you very much. So we are going to jump right into it, assuming that we have Sergeant Newman with us and he could be raised to the table.
He's not.
Is he not there? We could talk to him later then.
I'm just checking to see if he's on the other side here.
Okay.
Some people
He's
are having
not in
trouble getting in.
attendees.
Yeah.
I do not see him.
Okay.
Not
I know
sure.
he said he was busy, so
Okay.
we'll see if he is able to join us, and in which case we will interrupt ourselves at an appropriate time in the agenda and let him in. So we'll go then, if we could, to 3.2 on our agenda. And this will be Kirsten Defoe, Planner 1 for the Development Variance Permit for 824 and 840 Kiwanis Way. Kirsten, are you with us? There you are. Thank you. You have the floor. Yeah.
Thank you. The applications to be discussed today are for 2 development permits to increase the maximum permitted height for the public assembly zone for the construction of a proposed addition and a new building for affordable seniors housing at 824 and 840 Kiwanis Way. The purpose of the report is to obtain direction from committee to council on whether to proceed with the application and to notify neighbors of the variance requests. Subject properties with 824 Kiwanis Way outlined here in blue and 840 Kiwanis Way highlighted in yellow are located to the west and southwest of Kiwanis Way. 840 Kiwanis Way is part of a larger strata lot with 841 Kiwanis Way to the east, including a shared access way. 824 Kiwanis Way is developed with a 3-story seniors housing building built in 1992. Well, 840 Kiwanis Way has an older single-story seniors housing building constructed in 1970. For some context of the zoning, the property is in the public assembly zone. It's a zone shared with several surrounding properties. The only other zone abutting the property is the multifamily residential 2 to the north. Much of the west and south of the application properties are subject to a wide right-of-way easement for BC Hydro for the purposes of electrical transmission to the substation that's located over here. This provides a wide buffer to the south and west to the Alphenstown Secondary School property. To the north of the subject site are the residential uses of the Northwood Strata Corporation, while to the east is one vacant parcel, and also Sumac Place at 841, which is a specialized mental health facility operated by Vancouver Coastal Health. I would like to present to the committee Council Resolution R 2020-248. A substantially similar concept for the development of the properties was presented to Council in 2020 And the council made the resolution that the town of Gibsons acknowledges Kiwanis Housing Society's objectives are consistent with the town of Gibsons 2019 to 2022 strategic plan. Because of that resolution, the site plan may look familiar to the committee. The applicants propose to construct the addition and new building in phases so that they can ensure all current residents will have living accommodations throughout the project. And to keep the residential units affordable through funding from BC Housing, 76 new residential units are required by that agency, which would bring a total of 96, including the existing and newly constructed units. Because of the BC Hydro easement, again, which dominates the western, southern sides of the site, the available area for building this number of units is restricted. And this creates the need for 4 floors and also the rationale for the variance requests. So 2 variances to maximum permitted height are requested, 1 for each of the subject properties. For 824 Kiwanis Way, the request is for 13.4 meters or 1.2 meters above the bylaw. Whereas for 840 Kiwanis Way, it is for 15 meters or 2.8 meters greater than the bylaw. To understand the variances being requested, it's important to know that the zoning bylaw defines building height as the vertical distance between average eave level, between average grade and the mean elevation between average eave level and the ridge top of the slope. This is the view of the proposed addition at 824 Kiwanis Way from the east. Also has a depiction, a basic depiction of the existing building size. The red lines that I've added to this drawing show the 12.2 meter maximum permitted height and the 13.4 requested through the variance to give a scale of sort of the difference. You notice a diagram off to the right. Zoom in on that here. It shows that the visual impact of a building that's not requiring a variance, so one which is 12.2 meters high and located 6 meters from the property boundary, would actually appear larger than the proposed addition. In fact, for residents to the north, this theoretical bylaw conforming structure would completely block view of the building that is proposed. And when you're looking at it from the north, this is a depiction of what you would be looking at. And to move on to the request for 840 Kiwanis Way. This is the east view again. And I've added the red lines to compare the 12 meter maximum permitted height and the 15 meter height requested through variance. So again, this is a taller building than the addition. Similarly, I have one of these schematic diagrams showing the visual height from a property line, in this case, the strata property line between the subject site, 840, and its neighbor, Sumac Place at 841. So it is a taller building, and it is closer to the boundary than the previous example I had at the north side of 824. But it would still look comparable and in fact larger. A building that didn't need any variances and complied with the bylaw would appear bigger to people on that property. Referrals were sent out on September 29th. As the date of this presentation, no referral comments have yet been received from this combination. While the building department and the Gibsons and District Volunteer Fire Department identified no concerns, comments from infrastructure services are summarized in the report and presented here. And in addition, comments from BC Hydro have been received since the writing of the staff report and include that no part of the building will be allowed in BC Hydro right-of-way, including foundations or roof overhangs. And also identified that the applicant has already submitted the parking layout required for the required BC Hydro review and approval. That approval is needed because the parking is proposed to be located underneath the power lines within that easement. Staff would also like to bring to the committee's attention the communication with neighbors that the Kiwanis Housing Society has already conducted. including canvassing by the directors and a letter from the chair, which can be submitted to the town by neighbors supporting the proposal. Results from this preliminary communication by the Kiwanis Housing Society suggest widespread neighbor support for the proposal. At this time, the town has received 3 of the letters shown as completed by neighbors, and more of those are anticipated should council direct staff to notify neighbors. In considering variances, policy requires council to consider certain criteria, which are addressed in detail on pages 4 through 6 of the report, and I have touched on throughout the presentation. I have brought particular criteria for council's consideration. Firstly, the variance will not result in significant negative impacts on neighboring properties. As I've demonstrated with those schematic diagrams, the impact on neighboring properties are actually lesser than what could occur from a development that doesn't need any variances. There is a demonstrated need for the variance in order to permit reasonable use of the property. Note that 76 units are needed to ensure affordability for residents. And due to the BC Hydro easement, the buildable area limitations necessitate 4 stories. Whereas a property that didn't have that easement, which wasn't encumbered by that easement, could propose, for example, a 3-story building with a larger footprint. And because of that, the easement itself represents a site-specific situation or difficulty and will not appear to establish a precedent for other properties. Lastly, the variance results in a suitable development that is the asset and compatible in the context of the surrounding uses. Staff consider that affordable seniors housing is considered an asset to the town of Gibsons. And due to both the existing development, the surrounding open space represented by the right-of-way, and various other considerations reflected in the report, it is not overly large. The proposed height variance will not result in buildings that are overly large, and that will not be compatible with the surroundings. So they do seem that they are compatible in the context and therefore meet that criteria. So considering this, the recommendation from the staff report, the recommendations are summarized here. Council may either direct staff to notify neighbors for both DVP applications or to not support one or both of the DVP applications. Should council direct staff to notify neighbors, staff would then report back to council with any comments received from neighbors prior to a decision. I have also included that the recommendations as presented in the staff report be forwarded to tonight's council meeting. So again, thank you. I will leave this slide up and I will return the floor to council, or to the committee to discuss.
Kirsten, thank you very much for your presentation. I have one question, and that is, without the variance, without the 4th story or 4th floor, how many units are you looking at?
Strictly speaking, I'm not exactly sure, but if we refer back to floor plan, it's a little bit difficult to tell, but they are, each floor of the new building sort of replicates the floor below it. So I believe, so the proposed addition is 29 units, with the new building being the difference between 29 and 76.
Thank you. I actually see, a relatively small variance for a big gain in our affordable housing proposition that we need here for the community. So Councillor Crowell.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. And I think part of the reason they got the funding was because of the number of units that they were providing. So if they weren't to get the variance, they potentially could lose their funding. So
Councillor Ladwig.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's brilliant that we're using the hydro easement parking. I think that's just an awesome solution. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Dindrad.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I support the proposal. My only concern obviously is with the shading. but it appears that it's not going to be a big impact. And I'm happy to hear that the neighborhood already provided support. So I look forward to hearing from the rest, for the people who received the letter. Very exciting.
I think it's an excellent project and one that we very much need, Councillor Kroll.
I was going to move that we vote on option 1 and the last and that it goes to this evening's council.
Awesome.
Well, the recommendations are there on page 5, and there are 2 recommendations. One is that relates to 824 Kiwanis Way, and the other one relates to 840 Kiwanis Way. So you move both those recommendations? Both
Recommendations, and that the recommendations from the staff report be forwarded to tonight's council.
Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Diandrad. Any further discussion, council? No. No. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you, Kirsten, for providing us some very clear options and clearly understood report. Thank you. And welcome, Councillor Lumley. Corporate Officer?
It's the matter 3.1 that was tabled in the meeting until Sergeant Don Newman could arrive. Sergeant Don Newman has arrived.
Okay, well, we're going to put him until 6 o'clock now, aren't we? Okay, all right, let's move Don Newman, Sergeant Newman forward then, please. Thank you. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Don. How are you? Or Sergeant, how are you?
A little tired. I apologize for being late, but
That's all right.
Yeah. Due to an incident in Bay last
Welcome.
night. So,
Yeah.
I'll try and be coherent. If you hear snoring, I apologize. No. Do you have the stats in front of you? Did that get? I know it was produced late by our analyst, but did everyone get a copy?
We do have them, and we have received them.
Okay, that's good. Where, as we've discussed previously, we want to make these stats more usable. It's a work in progress. This is the first step. It was a new analyst. There were some glitches with naming, but just so everyone knows, and I believe Tamara probably highlighted that the SCA relates to Gibsons, but even within that they had trouble with the boundary. So that's actually a little higher than it should be. For instance, Q3 for total calls is actually 434, not the 600 listed. So I'm going to apologize. It's a work in progress. However, the rates are consistent even with it taken out. And I think what we're seeing when we go through these really quickly, that the general occurrences for the town of Gibsons is down a bit in 2021. Or the Gibsons area. I think I'll just speak to that instead of exactly. And that's consistent with the coast in general. 220, as we've discussed previously with COVID, I think will prove to be an outlier for statistics over a longer period, but we have to deal with that when we look at these short-term averages and comparisons. Violent crime, same thing. We're seeing a decrease in 2021. Both in the Gibsons area as well as the coast overall. And once again, that's a good thing. Property crime, we're seeing a bit of an uptick over last year. Property crime was one of those things that, because so many more people were at home, I think we saw some artificial declines in property crime. So we're actually more, I guess, increasing to the norm here, so we're closer to what our average is, but nothing that's completely alarming in the increases. Traffic offenses way down. I'll be honest with you, that's probably more related to the lack of proactive policing, so that's a bad thing that's down. We want that to be higher in a lot of cases, because that probably shows that we're not doing enough traffic enforcement in Gibsons. And then the last slide, which is a new one, relates to the mental health related general occurrences. And this is one we'll expand on in coming quarters as well. But I think this is relevant. This is a huge driver, both for police calls, but I think it's probably pretty topical when it comes to the town of Gibsons, especially with the Gibsons supportive housing and whatnot. So, and I think what this shows is we're down a little from 2021, but we're on par with 19. I think that's a product that the decrease is that we're moving back to some normalcy. We're becoming more engaged on a proactive level with mental health outreach, with high tide at the Gibson supportive housing. So I think that decline is a good thing. Not necessarily, I wouldn't read too much that as it relates to the amount of mental illness or the calls. This just more relates to apprehensions that we have. So I think that's a product of some good collaboration between the community, between mental health and between OCMP. I know I kind of whipped through that a bit, but I'm open to any questions. And one comment I would say, we, as Mayor Beamish and Councilman Crow will say, we've started the process and we're with this eventual emergence or possible emergence in April 1st, 2022. And we're working hard at finding ways to increase our visibility, not just the short term, but as a long term moving into 2022 and beyond. And so hopefully you'll start to see some positive change in the next weeks and months. And we're hoping our resource deficiencies, we've struggled over the past 9 to 12 months with some vacancies. We see a light at the end of the tunnel for some of those. And our hope is in December, we'll actually start to see some real progress in those areas.
Good, thank you. Just for clarification of everybody here, if we could go across on that table, SCA is Gibsons.
Gibsons area, yes.
Yeah, and SCB is what?
Is Seashelt.
Seashelt. SCC
would be the rural SCRD.
Okay, and SCD.
I don't know what they got that from. I believe it's the band.
Okay.
It's the Shisha Nation. So yeah. So like I said, it's a bit of a work in progress, and I didn't get this till I believe I sent this to Tamara last night. So yeah. I didn't receive it until last night, and I couldn't add it into the headers. So
good. No, that's fine. No, I appreciate that, seeing that and seeing where we stand relative to others. And I think that if you go to that traffic enforcement one, it probably does say relate to perhaps more presence in Seashelt with traffic enforcement. So yeah, we'd like to see the speeders caught. So yeah, Council, sorry, Don.
No, I was going to say, yeah, for sure we want more traffic enforcement and that will be a priority moving forward.
Yeah. Councilors, do you have any questions? Yeah. I'll just say thank you again, Don, for the meeting that we had with Superintendent DeDecker, and continue to receive emails from her and updates of some of the things that are happening. And I really appreciate that. We will put our own kind of committee together, I think, shortly in late November or December, to have our own transition committee to work with the yourselves and the province again. So that'll be, whether it's get the old gang back or whether it's a new gang, we'll see. Thank you.
Look forward to it.
So, anything else for Sergeant Newman? No, you can go and relax or whatever it is you're doing. Sergeant, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we're back on agenda 3.3. Invite the Director of Planning to come forward and talk about the community amenity contribution policy again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I put together a short PowerPoint presentation. There we go. Okay, so I've just gone back to the beginning to just get oriented here. So why update the CAC policy? So what we discussed early on was that the current policy is vague. So right now, the way the policy is written, Council instructs the Director of Planning to use Section 482 of the Local Government Act to negotiate with the applicant the amenities and affordable housing to be provided as part of the residential rezoning prior to the application being referred to a public hearing. This provides little direction to staff on what to base the negotiation on. It provides little direction to the development community, so they never really know what to expect when they come to the table with planning staff. And by pointing to Section 482 of the Local Government Act, Council may or may not be pleased with the CAC offer because it doesn't provide any boundaries or any goals. So basically, we were unsure whether the town was getting enough in CAC negotiations. And so we held a staff and council workshop. And at that workshop, the goals for updating the policy included implementing CAC best management practices. So that is to provide clarity, transparency, and consistency. So in doing that, the goal was to set some fair target rates and identify when a negotiated approach is preferred, and then what a negotiated approach would be based on. So the first proposal that came forward in May 2021 was to set target rates for a single family lot, so $10,000 for a single family lot. And then duplex townhouses and apartments were grouped into one category. So basically single family and multifamily, and the multifamily rate would be $4,000 per unit. And then there would be an option for a negotiated approach, which would require an economic analysis to be completed by a third-party consultant and provide the town with a 50% increase in that land value. Initially, that negotiated approach was at the applicant's choice. And then the following CAC exemptions were presented by the consultant. So nonprofit organizations, rental housing, and then of course, council can waive a CAC if council feels like it's necessary. So when that was presented to council, the committee asked for an updated CAC policy which differentiates the rates between townhouses and apartments. Council wanted a premium to view properties and an incentive for entry-level housing options, and also wanted us to consult the community to find out what the priorities were for the amenity options, the basket of goods approach, and then to determine what the percentage allocations would be for the CAC and affordable housing reserve funds. So we, the consultants did some more number crunching to establish some different target rates. And so once crunching those numbers, they found that apartments are in fact less expensive to build than duplexes and townhouses. So the rate was reduced for the apartment and live work. So there's a third category in this amended version. And then in terms of applying a premium to view properties, what we talked about was the only way to capture the value of a higher end product is to take a negotiated approach. There are a bunch of view properties in Gibsons, depending on the density, depending on the orientation of the windows. Not all units would be a view unit. So it's really difficult to apply a flat rate and gain a premium. So that concept is just a really difficult concept to administer. And the best way to achieve that would be through a negotiated approach. And then in terms of incentives for entry-level housing, the CAC policy is not the right tool for incentivizing development. In its nature, it's sort of a disincentive. You've got to pay more. But in order to incentivize housing, the best way to do that would be to implement recommendations in the housing strategy and work on incentivization that way. And then in terms of the community consultation, we had 384 people respond to that survey, and our communications coordinator presented that in October. And the following numbers, so 44% of the funds would go to the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund and 56% to the General Community Amenity Fund. And that was sort of the average of what we heard from the community. Following that, council asked for a comparison of the Eagle View Heights property. So what did we get when we negotiated it versus what would we get if we had a target rate? And so this slide here shows the negotiated approach on one side and then the target rate on the other side based on different value per unit. So in the negotiated approach, we negotiated 150,000 towards the Armours Beach Park improvements, and we negotiated 270,000 towards the Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. So that 270,000 was based on the town asking for a contribution of $30,000 per door for 10% of the units. So for 87 units, we rounded that up to 9 units and said we'd like 10% of the development, so 9 units. And so the total of, so basically 30,000 times 9 brings us to 270,000, plus the 150 for Armours Beach Park gave us a total of 420,000 in a cash contribution. In addition to that, we got a public access trail through the property to connect Eagle Crest Drive at the top down to Stewart Road. So right now we have a blanket right of way over the property. But once that trail is developed, we will narrow that down and put a right of way through the property. If we look at a comparison with our target rate, so if we looked at the $4,000 per unit, 87 times 4,000 minus the 10,000, because there is an existing lot, so they get credit for that, we would have gotten a 338,000 contribution. If we look at the reduced rate, we would have gotten a $251,000 contribution. So the gist of this is the negotiated approach leaves less money on the table because based on this, the town received approximately $5,000 per unit. So we got more than what our target rates would be. Yeah. So in terms of next steps, council could adopt an updated CAC policy, or you don't have to adopt a CAC policy, of course, if this is not the direction you want to go in. So the options to proceed if council wants to adopt an updated policy would be, option 1 would be to go with what the consultants proposed at the beginning. So just 2 separate rates, a single family and multifamily rate. Option 2 would go with the amended rate, so breaking apart apartments and townhouses. And then option 3, which was not originally an option. I mean, it's sort of the way we're going already. So right now we are going with a negotiated approach, although there are no parameters around the negotiation, and it's just, you know, we talk among staff, among senior staff, and decide sort of what we can try and get. But if we could proceed with updating our policy with just a negotiated approach to base it on some kind of land lift. So are we looking at 50%, or is council wanting more than that? So those are the 3 options I'm presenting for council's consideration. And I will leave it to you to deliberate.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Director. And I'll go to council for discussion. I have some thoughts. One of my thoughts, just throw it out there too, is that, you know, on the one hand, we are very concerned with the cost of housing in the community. And on the other hand, we're concerned with how much we can get from a developer. And I think that we have to find a balance on that to make it fair for all, so that we don't continue to price housing and price people out of the market in Gibsons. So my thoughts are that I'm comfortable with it as it's laid out. I understand that some council might be thinking that we should be getting more, and I'll leave that for conversation. So who's first? Councillor Crowell?
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. A couple of things. I think one of the things in this is that anyone who builds a house in the town of Gibsons would be paying the If they're building a new single-family home, they'd be paying the $10,000. If they're building a duplex, they'd be paying the proportionate additional cost for multifamily. The only thing in the whole policy that I have issue with is the $10,000 credit for demolishing a building. I know in a way it sort of incentivizes building, but you get into an interesting scenario. If I parceled 3 lots, tore down 3 houses, I would get a $30,000 credit. And then if I built a triplex on each of the properties, I'd be paying for the $4,000 each for those. So at the end of the day, it would cost me $6,000 to build 9 units. Which in a sense is incentivizing developers to do something like that, which I think is important. But I just wanted to confirm that $10,000 credit, if that's the way it in fact works.
Director of Planning?
Thank you, through the mayor. So yeah, the credit is for the existing lot. So exactly, if you've got 3 lots and you're wanting to a developer wants to amalgamate them, they get a credit for the existing zoning, the existing lot. So they would get a credit for each of those 3 lots. And then if they amalgamate them, presumably they're going to go for a density that's more than what could be built on 3 single family lots or duplex lots.
So
that is the intention.
Yeah, and which hopefully would increase, increase densities and, create more housing. I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
Yeah, and just a reminder that the CAC policy only applies if somebody is rezoning. So if you have a single family lot and you tear it down and you build a duplex because you're allowed that under zoning, there's no CAC negotiation. The trigger is the upzone, is the density that they're asking for, is the change in land use and the change in zoning.
Councilor Gindrad, then Councilor Ladwig.
Thank you, Mayor. I did a quick calculation. If we put a value of $5,000, and if we multiply, for example, if Eagleville's was today, we would get 422,000. So perhaps that's the way to go. I saw some municipalities, Saanich North, they charge $9,000. Why are we charging so low? I mean, that could be another option. If you do $5,000, it becomes comparable to Eagleville. Another area that I would like to talk as well in our discussion last time was about the negotiated approach. And I saw on the slide from the Director of Planning that she mentioned the view. So I would like to add a bullet on the current policy that where the proposed development is situated in a view protection. So that's a negotiated approach. It's not currently on the bylaw, on the draft. And another area, I think I took this from the former policy, but it says, I think it's a good idea to have the city can and should reserve the right to continue to negotiate on a site-specific rezoning where the rezoning is either something not considered in the OCP or for comprehensive development area zone, which we know there's specifics. And I think this can support a point that Councillor Lumley made last time, that it should be more clear that we can, I mean, right now, the way it is, it seems that the negotiated approach is triggered by the developer and not by the town. So these are I think it should be explicit that we can, in any moment, council can make a decision to do a negotiation approach, especially, in this, if it's not something not considered in the OCP, if it's on a comprehensive development area zones, and obviously on the view protection zone, or anytime they decide. I think it's important that we specify that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Director of Planning, I'll let you respond to that.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 points. So first of all, you mentioned the charge of 5,000 per unit. That would bring us up to what we negotiated in the past with Eagleview. Yes, that is one approach you could do. It's probably more than a 50% land lift for most developers, but it would set a target rate. And if a developer felt like that was too high and not fair, they could opt for that negotiated approach. So that could work as well. In terms of the negotiated approach, the way it's written right now, a negotiated approach would apply if there is an OCP amendment. So that's already in there. And it would also apply where there's a complex project, such as a phase development. And so a comprehensive development zone could apply to that complex project as well. And then in terms of the view protection, I'll just share my slide. I'll just share my screen if council's okay with that, to show you what the view protection area looks like.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so if you look at the town of Gibsons here, here's the map. This area that's shown shows the view protection area. So if that's the area you're looking for, we could apply that. But like, I mean, if these properties develop down here, they're not in the view protection area. So if the intention is to gain a premium on view properties, the view protection area like might not necessarily meet your intention. So I just wanted to flag that. Like there's a lot of properties here that have views, like even up here and at the top of School Road, they'll have views, but they're not in a view protection area. And then what does that premium look like is the next question. So what is council trying to get out of the view protection? So I would need some more direction around how to update the policy if that is to be applied. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ledwig.
Yeah, thanks, Director of Planning. And I apologize, I lost connectivity with my computer, so I only caught the tail end of your presentation. So I am feeling like I'm in a bit of a disadvantage here because I didn't catch it all. But in that one slide that you provided where you showed the comparable with Eagleview then and now, there was it more of a cash contribution in our new proposal and more of an in-kind contribution in the negotiated one with all the amenities that were No. So under a negotiated approach, we got more. So like when you negotiate on a case by case, you look at the lot, you can look at like the network, the transportation network, and you can kind of zone in on what could we use from this project and negotiate based on that. So you leave less money on the table, the town would get more for it. It's not a best management practice, and it leaves a lot of unclarity for the development community. So, right.
So yeah, so that's sort of what council needs to weigh is the transparency, the consistency, and the clarity versus the negotiated approach, which is behind closed doors.
Right. Okay. So one other question I had was with regard to Councillor DeAndrade's comment about a target rate of 5,000 per unit, and you said that would bring some developments above the 50% land lift. Would it be possible to make that contribution on projects above a certain unit size so that it kept that in check? Because it's smaller projects, I imagine, where that would become more problematic, right? So it would only apply to kind of larger projects, probably like Eagleview. Is that like, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, you could, council could do that.
Like above 10 units or something like that, then it becomes a $5,000 contribution as opposed to 4.
Yep, that could be one way to look at it.
Okay.
I don't know what that land lift would be at this point because we haven't calculated the numbers, and of course when we calculated the numbers, 5,000 would have just been, you know, like way too high, and even 4,000 would have been too high. But for some developers, 10,000 is appropriate. It really depends on the development itself, the land, and we're trying to do a blanket approach, like a one size fits all for the town of Gibsons, which is why it's, you've got to look at sort of the low end development to make it a fair policy.
And I do sympathize, because a small development project, there's not as much profit as everybody thinks. So it does depend on the size of the project. So anyway, okay, thanks.
Councillor Lumley.
Yeah, a couple things. I know, and you and I spoke about this after the last meeting. I'd like to see the land lift percentage go to 75%, because we're just talking about the land lift only. I think what happened with the Eagle View Heights is that, or what can happen is that, like during or like after negotiations, then you've negotiated yourself out with very little. Like I don't think any of these amounts are very high for a developer, to tell you the truth. I mean, that development, the 400,000 he paid to the town, he probably made that back on one unit out of his entire development. So just with the pure market, and I, you know, you can, I don't know. I just don't feel sorry for these people, because it's not going to come down. And every development that's gone in so far, there's no affordability. It's not like they make anything affordable. And I guess they shouldn't. They're developers, right? They want to make all the profits that they can. And you know what? If you make a really small development and you can't make your money, then you don't make the development, I guess. I mean, it's not like we're like begging people to like develop every inch of Gibsons. So I'd like to see an increase in that, maybe, and just simplify it. I agree with Councillor DeAndretti, just say 5,000 across the board, 75%. And to David Kroll's point, I'd like to see the $10,000 credit removed. So, because again, it's just like a non-factor. Like if someone's, as you said, and I think you basically agreed with the director, was that, I mean, if somebody's going to group 3 lots together, tear down 3 homes and rezone it, you know, $30,000, I don't know, it'd probably be better in our pockets than in theirs. That's just my feeling. So those are the adjustments that I would make. I would take out the credit entirely. And you know what, maybe if you push up the 75%, I know I mentioned the negotiated, but maybe if you push it up to 75%, you might even get better negotiations. Like if a developer wants to negotiate, maybe the town will succeed. I mean, I don't know. At the current rate, I think that's why we wanted to review this, because I think the town's getting shafted and shortchanged on like most of these major developments. And yeah, I'd just like to see us do better. So those would be my 2. And I did have one question. So I increase it to 75, remove the $10,000 credit, 5,000 across the board. And then the view protection, I'm a little confused on that. Is someone going to pay into the affordable housing fund to take away somebody's view? Is that
No.
How does the view protection area? It's just a question. So
It's because they have a view, they're going to pay more.
So if they make a development with views,
Yeah,
in a
charge
view
them more.
area, okay,
BC assessments will charge them more, but
yeah,
we can charge them more.
okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Director of Planning.
I was just going to say that adding the view premium is really tricky to administer. Like if there's a tree in the way and the tree was cut, do you count that as a view? Like there's just the administration is really hard. So I'd need some guidance around how you plan or how you want me to administer that. Yeah. Because all the advice I've gotten from the consultant is you can't do it. The way to do that is a negotiated approach. And then if you wanted to say view properties would be negotiated, then we'd have to come up with some parameters around what a view property is. Like, what does that mean?
I think you'll also find that whoever is buying a view property is paying a premium over a non-view property to begin with. And I think that's the experience in Gibsons. Councillor Ladwig, you had your hand up? No? Yeah, I'm willing to go along with whatever you guys want. I'd like to see this resolved. I'd like to see it. I'd like to change the review process here to have it reviewed after 1 year from adoption and then 2 years thereafter, every 2 years thereafter. But I am equally concerned, how do we balance this conversation with a conversation that says that we want to make housing affordable in the town of Gibsons? And because part of that affordability is every dime that we add to the cost is added to the cost of a purchaser. So as we increase those costs, we can't sit here and be holier than thou and say, look, we are worried about affordability. And I have a concern about that. So Councillor Ladwig, go ahead.
I agree with you, Mayor Beamish. I think what we're doing is we're sliding down the housing continuum and we're just making home ownership at this end of the spectrum less affordable. So we might be giving back at this end, but we're removing it from this end. And I do agree with you that we need to balance that out, because at the end of the day, a developer has a pro forma and they look at a certain percentage and they will just add this cost on to the sale price. So that I do think we need to balance. I am curious about, and I apologize again if I missed it earlier, Director of Planning, but this conversation around 50% land lift versus 75% land lift, have we done some comparison with other municipalities and what the average contribution from a land lift perspective is across other municipalities, and where do we sit in that? Like I heard Councillor DeAndrade saying 9,000 per unit somewhere, so I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, through the mayor. It ranges. It really depends on the municipality's perspective on development. So some municipalities want development, so they'll lower that land lift to try and incentivize it, still get a little bit, but encourage development in a community. So it could be as low as 20% or 25%. Some municipalities are at 75%. 50% is a nice middle ground, and an average, it's a good place to start. So that's where the consultants recommended starting at 50%. But yeah, it's all over the place.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor DeAndrade, then Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor. I think since we started dealing with the CAC policy, land of the value of the house in the town of Gibson's doubled, and we're still looking at $3,000. So I think we need to take into account we have a lot of expenses ahead of us. Police and everything else it's maintenance, infrastructure. Infrastructure is getting older. I know we have been advanced in water infrastructure and sewage, but at the end of the day, the town also has like big bills to pay. So I think we need to balance that too, because right now we are talking about $5,000, which is not even compared to how the value of house increased. And I understand developers have a cost. At the same time, this is prime land now, and the costs of everything are increasing. And how do we maintain the town? At the end of the day, what are we going to do? Download everything to current residents? So I think it is important to balance that too, and look at $5,000. It's not too much.
I would remind that none of this money goes towards paying the operational costs of the town of Gibsons.
I understand, but
So
it will
that,
go to affordable housing or other
but it doesn't offset policing costs. It doesn't offset those other costs you mentioned. Those are costs that will be paid for by the taxpayers who move into those units. Additional costs. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I think part of what's driven this is what is felt has been lost on previous large projects. And, the horses left the barn. Trying to recover, make up for lost revenue, is not going to happen, I think. And you brought it up yourself, is in one hand, we're trying to encourage affordable housing. And on the other hand, we're looking to recapture revenue, which is potentially driving up the cost of affordable housing. I think what the director of planning has tried to offer is, if I'm thinking I have a lot I could potentially build, what is it going to potentially cost me up front? This is a tool to give them the information without wasting endless hours of staff time in meetings explaining it to them. This is what it's going to cost. If it's over 10 units, then it becomes or potentially a negotiated cost. Or if it's there are other factors that come into play, it could become negotiated. So I think right now what we're offering people who are looking to build is a shortcut to get to knowing what it's going to cost them up front. And yeah, we can charge whatever we like, but is anything that can get built? How many there's not going to be likely another Eagle View in this community unless everyone in Heritage Hills decides to sell to a developer to build condos. It's, in all likelihood, it's not going to happen in our lifetime. So I think, what we're offering here is a guideline to developers or builders, because a lot of times when you say developers aren't building single homes or duplexes, or it's usually multi things, in which case we'd be dealing with a negotiated approach. So I think what we're doing is just offering a guideline up front for builders. And, we're not going to recover what we've lost on some of these previous developments.
I think the interesting part is that we keep alluding to what we've lost, whereas what we see from the example given on Eagle Crest, we actually had a very successful negotiation in terms of value. And I'm not sure where the loss comes in terms of what we're looking at. Councillor Lumley?
Yeah, don't misconstrue my example as a way of recovering what might have been lost there. And you're right in your last comment. I mean, what we're proposing, we'd get less.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that if you think by raising something $2,000 will create more affordable housing from developers, then I think you're naive. You know what? Those 2-bedroom condos up there are going for $1.2 million. There's zero affordability up there. So if we would have said, hey, by the way, instead of paying us $400,000, we're just going to have $200,000. Do you think the prices of those units or those townhomes would go down? Absolutely not. These things are fluctuating with the market. I completely don't see how anyone would see that, hey, you didn't charge us so much for affordable housing or CACs. Wow, I'm just going to lower the price of all my houses and my units. Never happen. It's only going to go up. And I'm not trying to recover anything. Yeah. I'm just saying everything's going to go up. Maybe what we should be asking should just be a little higher than what we were getting before. That's all I think. But
not every property is an Eagle Crest, and so that not every development is an Eagle Crest. So.
But I understand that. But if you can go through and you can look at people buying lots in this town, and I don't want to name anybody, but I mean, all you have to do is drive down South Fletcher, and there's just monster homes going up everywhere. What about that? We're not going to get anything from these things. Like couples of people are building 6,000 square foot homes. Gibsons isn't at some point, Gibsons is just going to be unaffordable. Yeah. So, I mean, what are you going to do? I'm not trying to recover Eagle View, and I know there might be another Eagle View. How do you know? Yeah. Anyway, I would just like to be prepared.
Yeah. That's all. Yeah. Councillor Diendraad?
Mayor, I understand the point of view that was raised with administrating the areas in the view protection zone. But at the same time, how do you compare? If I decide, like Councillor Lumley just said, on South Fletcher, all these units that will be sold by a fortune, and an apartment that is on the higher Gibsons. So we need to have, I don't know how we're gonna get away with that. I understand that is more administration and it costs at the end. It costs the town, it costs staff. But at the same time, we live in an area that there is this discrepancy. It's a landscape. Yeah. And so I think we need to I don't know, I understand the view protection is a challenge, but at the same time, we cannot just say, okay, let's uniform everything. It wouldn't work.
I think we're talking about maybe we are adjusting our own philosophy towards developing the town and saying we are not a town that's going to be affordable. We are a town that's going to be the Sausalito to San Francisco. It's going to be unaffordable. It's going to be the place where people want to be. And that affordability is going to be elsewhere, because that's where we seem to be accepting. We're accepting the fact that, hey, it's not affordable. And I understand that. I mean, we are a very attractive place for people to come and live. And if they want to come and live here, why not make them pay? But
Mayor,
yeah.
But Mayor, this is not, we don't control that, actually.
No,
We do not control.
well,
But at the same, but that is, I
Yeah.
understand,
Yeah.
I appreciate the point you raised,
Yeah.
but at the same time, if we charge properly,
Yeah.
this kind of developer, this kind of development, we can have money for affordable housing. Then we would have, obviously, the real estate is really expensive, but we will provide social housing, right, or affordability. And I don't see any other way of doing that.
No, it may be. I think you're right. I think that we will provide affordable housing. I think that we have to look then at our own construction and our own providing of affordable housing. So, Councillor Kroll?
Just to point, some of these houses that are being built in view protection areas, the fact that they're building, if the zoning's already in place, it wouldn't trigger these development cost charges anyway.
Fine.
So it's.
So I'm not seeing a motion. Does somebody want to make a motion and on this? Because we've actually considered this for quite some time, and we've had these debates, so that you've got some ideas. I think we need to put them out there and move forward. Councillor Diendrath?
Yeah, I make a motion that we increase the rate for apartments and townhouses to 5,000, and also that we include the view protection zone on the negotiated approach, and perhaps even all the lower Gibsons we consider for this negotiated approach, because they all have some sort of a view. And like Councillor Crow said, it's not everything that's going to trigger, because many people would not be increasing density, but the few ones, at least the town can benefit. So I'll make a motion that we increase to $5,000, and we include in a negotiated approach the view protection zone, and expand the view protection zone to Lower Gibsons.
Well, that's a different thing. That's another bylaw. We have to make a bylaw change to expand the view protection zone. That's the view protection zone exists because of the smaller cottages in the town. And then that's why it exists, because those smaller houses need to have that protection from somebody building in front of them. So that that's where the view protection zone exists. That's why it's Heritage Hills and a little bit along the lower part of South Fletcher, I think. So, so that I think you're talking not about view protection zone, you're talking about houses with views or properties with views. And so that's a different topic, and that's Franklin Road on the waterfront. That's an awful lot of areas that the town's going to have to identify as where that view exists. So, and
okay. So we can make like houses with views, like the view area. We can even say Lower Gibsons, and the line will go up to the protection zone.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I personally have difficulty with that one, because if you go to a higher elevation in Parkland, you will have a view. So the quality of that view is going to differ, but you will have a view from the higher elevation in Parkland. And so, Councillor Crowell, you're going to say?
Just clarification from staff. This does not apply to properties that are being built as rentals, correct?
Through the mayor. So if somebody rezoned their property and they were proposing 100% rentals, then they would be exempt from having to pay a CAC.
Okay.
But we would secure it with a covenant
Yep.
to make sure.
I just wanted to, that brought up as for clarification, because if someone's building 70 units of affordable rental, they're not going to be, this is not going to apply.
That's correct. And
And that
it wouldn't even need to be affordable rental.
Doesn't
At
have to
this
be
point, it's any rental. It could be market rental because we have that need for all rentals. So market rentals are exempt as well.
Yeah. Councilor Ledwig?
Sorry, does the current policy say that a developer can negotiate if they want, if they feel that they have something that's always still an option?
Yeah, so the intention is we have set target rates. And if somebody meets the target rates, then it's consistent with the policy. If a developer says, whoa, these target rates are way too high, that's way more than if council wants to up it to 75%. That's more than 75%. I want to go to the negotiated approach and hire a third-party consultant to crunch the numbers and put together an offer. So a developer can at any point opt out of the target rates and go for the negotiated approach. And then just to follow up on Councillor DeAndrade's comment about view protection, we could, like if you want to identify a lower Gibsons area, we have the harbor area plan, and we could look at the harbor area neighborhood plan. And I can show you a map if council wants to go in that direction, but there is a boundary there. Again, it's like less than the view protection area. The view protection area puts a limit on the height of a building so that there's views, but there's views like all over Gibson. So it doesn't, I don't know if that meets your intention, but it could be a starting place.
Councilor Lumley?
Yeah, I know that Councillor DeAndrade made a motion. I think she did, but
It wasn't seconded yet.
I know, and I don't want to get into amending, or I guess I don't want to go down that wormhole of amending motions, but I'd still like to ask. I mean, I don't know, I still want the 75 land lift just to afford property flipping that get rezoned, which is happening right now in the town as well. So if somebody gets if we take a 50% in the future on the development of a land lift, but somebody flips a property, why would we let them make 100% on their money? I think it's a good stopgap, the 75%, and then they can always move to negotiate, which then it puts a town in a stronger position. So it's not necessarily taking money from them. It's just, it's just having a bit more power. So I'd like to see that added in there, I guess. But if her motion dies, I'll make the same motion and add that after, I guess. Or I could amend it maybe. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go to the corporate officer.
Motion that Councillor DeAndrade moved. I'd like to make sure I get it right. And then I would suggest that either you vote on that and bring Councillor Lumley's motion forward separately, or you can amend the motion. Here's what I have captured for Councillor DeAndrade's motion: that the CAC target rate at section 4.1.2 be amended such that it's increased to $5,000 per unit for the duplex, townhouse, and 3-family dwelling, and the apartment use and the work dwellings. And that the negotiated approach included in the list of examples at section 4.1.4 include, and here's where I'm unclear, either properties with views or view protection area properties. And I need to know which one was intended for your motion.
It was intended the properties with views, and I understand the point that Mayor mentioned, that there are other areas outside the harbor plan that has views as well. It could, outside the view protection zone. And what I would like to do, I like the suggestion from the Director of Finance. We can start with the harbor plan, the harbor area. And perhaps in the future, we can even assess other areas. But I would like to start somewhere. So can I change my motion to include the harbor area?
So it would say, and that the negotiated approach included in the list of examples of section 4.1.4 include properties with views and the Gibsons Harbor area.
The director has some input.
I would suggest some change. So I would say, I think this is what I'm hearing. I'm taking notes as well. Target rates would be updated to have single family of 10,000 and a multifamily at 5,000. So we're going back to 2 target rates, which was originally proposed. And then the land lift would be increased from 50% to 75%.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the negotiated approach, I've heard a few things, so I'll need some clarification on it. I've heard if located within the, well, we've discussed if located within the harbor area plan, then that would default to the negotiated approach. I've also heard where a development exceeds more than 10 units, that would default to a negotiated approach. So those would be the 2 additions. And then it's all ready for OCP amendments, and it's all ready for complex rezonings.
So I'm happy to add the 75 on this motion and on the harbor area plan and the exceed 10 units, because that's what we used to have in the past to be a negotiated approach. Or maybe, well.
Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councilor Lumley, you're seconding it? Okay, it's on the table for discussion. Now, Councilor Kroll, go ahead.
The only issue I have is, you know, I understand the rationale behind the premium for view, but I think, you know, I think it's going to be a really awkward thing to police and control. You know, there's a tree there, I have no view. You build, all of a sudden you've got a view. So, you know, on one hand, we're trying to protect tree canopy. We've got a tree bylaw in the works. I'm just thinking there's so many natural factors that come into play here that make it, you know, a logistical nightmare. What qualifies as view? When is it a view? When is it not a view? I've paid a premium, the tree grew, I've lost my view. Do I get a credit back? You know, where do you draw the line? So I'm happy with the motion, leave the view business out.
I'm going to address your stats.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just share my screen because we spoke to the harbor area plan. So it is really difficult to administer to determine whether there is a view or not. But what we could do, which was part of the motion, was to say if it's located within the harbor area plan, which is this area outlined in green, if there's a rezoning application in this area, then it would default to a negotiated approach, which would mean the applicant would have to hire a third-party consultant and they would have to calculate all their numbers and then offer 75% of the land lift. So that's what that would mean. We wouldn't get into the details of which units have a view, which units don't. It would just be a default if you land in one of these areas outlined by the harbor area plan.
Okay, is that your intention, Councilor Diendrad? Well, we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, no, but that's the, I think this is a good start. It doesn't involve every single property, but at least these are premium properties, right? So.
Okay, Councilor Ladwig.
When I originally brought up the view properties, because I think I was the one that brought this up when we were discussing this, it was when before we were increasing the contribution for all the projects across the board. Like, to me, a townhouse selling on Park Road is going to go for less than the one selling down, you know, down in the harbor area. But now we've just increased it for everybody. And now we're going to go and say, and it's going to get negotiated down there. Like, I just don't know if it's necessary. And one thing that I would also be curious about would be, I don't know how quick we could be with our calculator, but now if we're applying these new contribution targets, I'd like to go back to that Eagle View example and just see what that would have meant for us now. Like now is a whole nother calculation. So where are we sitting at now relative to what we got before and what is on this paper and what we're now proposing?
Eagle Crest wouldn't pay a premium for a view anyway in Eagle Crest, so it'd be best, be less. Listen, we have a motion on the floor, and rather than recalculate and everything else like that, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion on the floor?
I need to hear it repeated. Sorry.
Okay, repeat the motion. Yeah.
I'll do my best. That the CAC target rate at section 4.1.2 be increased to $10,000 per unit for a single family dwelling and $5,000 per unit for a multifamily dwelling. And that the negotiated approach be amended to include a 75% increase in land value instead of 50%. And further, that the negotiated approach include in properties with views and the harbor area plan properties in the list of examples at section 4.1.4. Did I get it right?
Don't think so. I think you said properties with views in the harbor area. It's properties in the harbor area.
In the harbor area plan.
Yeah, doesn't matter whether they got views or not.
Or if located within the harbor area plan
that's right.
area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Ludwig?
Can we vote on these separately? It's a whole lot in one motion.
It's one motion right now. Yeah. So I'm going to call the question. We've been at this for a while. All in favor of the motion as it was read? Understood. Okay. Opposed? Look, I'd like to have recorded. My opposition is this. We continue adding costs to developers. We continue arguing in favor of affordable housing. We hire consultants to give us their best advice. We pay for that advice and we don't take it. I think that's a pattern that we have. I'm concerned with that. The policy provided for a review time frame to see if it works. I would probably have agreed to go to the $5,000 per unit, which was basically what we had there a while back, sort of thing, in terms of the plan, and we changed it so that. But it's passed. So motion to move this to council tonight. Councillor Lumley, second by Councillor Crowell. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Councillor Gindra.
Yeah, I would like to add, perhaps you have to do another motion, just a more explicit, because when I read the 4.1.4 approach, it seems that the developer can always trigger a new negotiation, but it's not clear to me that any time council can make a decision. And perhaps, for example, we find out that a development that is not on the harbor view area, but we understand that for the nature of the development, and we would like to negotiate. I think it's just important to have this explicit. It's unless someone can point out that it is. When I read, I don't see how it gives and actually Councillor Lumley made this comment last time, and that was my concern too.
Okay, sorry, I'm just, yeah. Yeah, other comments? Okay, we've got still a full agenda ahead of us. Like Councillor Gindra.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we add a line here on a negotiated approach, that any time council can, at their discretion, opt for a negotiated approach. Because we have a line concerning the developer, but not council.
Okay, Somebody want to second that? No? Okay, somebody want to second that? You can't second it, Director Stats. Nice try, yeah. Director Stats, you want to say something?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to point out that under the responsibilities, it's council's responsibility to accept a community amenity contribution. So at any point, council can say, no, I don't accept it. We'd rather direct staff to enter into negotiations. So you have that authority at any point to say no. But generally, if somebody meets the policy, the intention is that the council would accept it.
The review process in the bylaw or in the policy is set for 2 years hence. So we'll have 2 years to struggle with it and experiment with it and see how it works for us. But and I think that then it should be reviewed and see how effective it's been. And so okay. Okay, Councillor Diendrad, I didn't see a seconder for your motion. So that if there's anything further, nothing further on this, we'll carry on the agenda. So now we're going to go to the staff reports. Now they've all been received. I'm mindful that it's now 4:22 and that we have other meetings ahead. So we'll go now to the report from the CAO Corporate Officer, page 27 to 32 of your agenda package. Corporate Officer, I'll let you move this forward.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I'll be speaking to this because our Chief Administrative Officer, Mark Brown, is away and returning November 16th. But he has participated in the drafting of this report. We continue to provide the usual services of mayor and council support for meetings of all types, both committee and council meetings, correspondence, legal and risk management, records and information management, information technology liaison work, freedom of information processing, ombudsperson requests processing, ICBC and motor license services, planning and coordination through the CAO at the regional level, and processing applications for filming permits and public place use permits. Mark has included a list under strategic plan at page 28 of your package of the various things that have council has been making progress on with regard to the items listed in your strategic plan. We held a workshop, Finishing Strong, on September 28th with facilitator Tracy Lawrenson, and it was a very useful evening. And council proposed a few new projects initiatives that staff are going to now review and provide an update on the progress of these back and bring it back to council. The increase in community engagement, the town has continued to be very proactive on this with emerging topics that are relevant to our community citizens. Public input is being received and considered with respect to several issues, including housing needs and homelessness. Regarding advocating for and facilitating a range of housing types, we have successfully obtained funding from the Strengthening Community Services Grant administered by the UVCM. Silas White is the project coordinator, the consultant that is working on our project called Everybody Needs a Home, and has been making significant strides in addressing the housing needs for the community. He is in attendance tonight on the other side. And if anybody has questions for him, he could be moved over, but I believe he's reporting further under the Director of Planning's Q3 report, which comes later in your package this evening. Managing our assets, the Source to Sea project team continues to meet on a monthly basis to advance the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative with the goal to understand and develop strategies to ensure that the natural assets in the project area are managed in order to provide safe, reliable drinking water supplies for the town of Gibsons through aquifer recharge, stormwater management, and flood mitigation service. Again, I won't elaborate. I don't want to steal the thunder of people who are reporting later on various activities under those programs. Michelle Lewis is here, and I believe the mayor may have something to report on his meeting for tomorrow. The CAO continues to advocate and collaborate on regional issues. He coordinates provincial government UVCM meeting topics and appointments, and a number of the SCRD staff and town staff work together, and we liaise with our counterparts also at the District of Sechelt, and in order to enhance the coordination of services, trying to provide them seamlessly to citizens on the coast. The recent sharing of water with the SCRD during the drought conditions experienced this past summer is a good example of an initiative that demonstrates cooperation between our neighboring jurisdictions. But there are many other collaboration opportunities that continue to be identified and discussed. Our communications coordinator has provided for you a very good, thorough list. You may remember the work she did during the extreme heat events that we had, as well as with regard to the CAC policy that we've just discussed, and other initiatives like the Glassford Road closure, the Wildlife Attractants Bylaw, Wildfire Risk Mitigation Plan, the Armour's Beach closure. We continue to operate under the similar restrictions that we had when the ministerial order was in effect, but our IT team continued to work closely with me and have been doing research on equipment, audio equipment in particular, that will be needed in order to improve our ability to deliver a hybrid type meeting. We did run a sample meeting here with just staff, and we encountered some barriers that need to be resolved before we're ready to do that, successfully do that, so that everyone can hear and participate in a meaningful way. But we are getting close, and we are continuing to work on it. I believe our IT consultant was at SCRD. I believe he's gone to North Van, and I'm not sure, I believe Sechelt as well, and maybe some others, and is coming back to see me. I think he was at the SCRD on Friday. So he's only here one day a week, so it takes a little while before we connect and review what he has discovered. And he and I have spent some time looking at some equipment online as well. So our communications, back to our communications coordinators list of topics: the orange crosswalk installation, tennis court signage, Brothers Park closure, Georgia Beach signage, the SCRD and the town of Gibsons water sharing strategy, new bike lanes, White Tower Park expansion, the White Tower Park archaeological discovery, and then of course for the new event this year was our National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, which she helped promote messaging throughout the town and elsewhere for ways that we could honor this new holiday. The water treatment plant odor control plan, the UNESCO Biosphere Region announcement, and then a host of other miscellaneous things. You'll see at page 30, there's quite a lot of meetings for which we provide agendas. We attend in order to make sure there's a record of the meeting. We go back and re-listen sometimes to the recordings of these meetings to make sure we get things right. And also tracking the resolutions and the activities that arise from those meetings. And then just hosting and running the Zoom software and whatnot as well. And you'll see there's a list from the CAO of meetings that he specifically attended as well. And then, of course, compiling and distributing your CRF that goes out once a week, and then responding to various correspondence. Often we liaison with the public and between council and others. Property tax transactions and utility bill transactions. We had a utility billing to deal with and mail outs. The CAO in particular oversees these reports. He reads them and lets us know when they're approved. So he's up on everything. We continue to handle a number of freedom of information requests, as well as the request from the Ombudsperson of BC and the FOI Commissioner. And a number of agreements, contracts, licenses, and leases are up for review. And that's an ongoing task that's regularly on my desk, as well as dealing with the Land Titles Office and the registration of various covenants, permits, letters of comfort, and whatnot. And also taking a look at our records management at the security of town records in the archives building. At page 31, I'd like to cover what the CAO wrote in here, that the SRD and Gibsons interface meetings. The town of Gibsons and the SRD have initiated scheduled meetings with personnel from respective local governments to discuss matters of mutual interest. In particular, this list included road network and active transportation coordination, planning processes, water supply and aquifer protection, and recreation facilities. We've undergone some management training. We also had a workshop just for staff with Tracy Lawrenson entitled Reflect, Reset, Reconnect, which was really useful to us and provided some insightful discussion around the challenges that we are facing as staff with a growing community. The UBCM provincial meetings was something that the CAO tackled. Council and staff from the town, SCRD, and District of Sechelt jointly attended various meetings with ministries and the ministry staff of the province of BC. And these covered topics that range from the opioid crisis to policing, aquifer, and watershed protection. And council's recently established select committees have met quite a few times during Q3. The tree bylaw select committee also continues to review the town's tree bylaw and is working on engaging the help of a facilitator. We've made one initial attempt at retaining the services of someone, and I've gone back to them because there's an issue with regard to timing of their availability in their calendar, but I haven't heard back yet. So we'll continue following through on that. And the Holland Lands and Cultural Corner Revitalization Select Committee has met 2 times in Q3. They've met again since, but the committee has reviewed the library's expansion needs, as well as the additional space requested by the museum. The future needs of the present occupants of the properties in this area are being determined, as well as the potential for civic and other uses to be expanded or established within the Holland Lands area. You will see there the council expenses chart. It covers Q1, Q2, and Q3, and then provides you a year to date at the end as to your expenses, which you're well within the budgeted amount allotted for your expenses this year so far. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Ooh, no, council, questions? Okay, Councilor Dindrad, then Councilor Crowell.
It's not a question. It's just because it's more than twice I heard the number on the agenda. So I think I have another agenda. I think I have the latest one because mine seems to have more pages. It's just like, I don't know.
You know, the page numbering, my page numbering was off because I added, Sergeant Newman's pages were added.
Sorry, no problem. It's just because other people are listening, but that's fine.
Yes, my page numbering was off by about 5 pages, I think.
Okay.
So. Yeah, my apologies.
Councilor Crowell.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. Just a quiz question, and I can check with staff separately. It was just with respect to the $200 expense. It was for a conference, but there was a free, I believe, a free registration given to the town, and I attended in place of, I was registered for it, but then the mayor didn't attend, and I did attend, and they were supposed to issue us a credit.
Oh, okay. I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
And thank you all very much, staff, for all you do. I'm very impressed with the information at the top of page 30, your 4 of 6. The web page visits, it does show that people are paying attention to what is being done, and the information we put out is very important. That over 13,953 views relative to the orange crosswalks. That's a number that's significant. So that one thing that I don't see in here is the number of FOI requests that you received during a period and have dealt with.
I've received 3 new ones this year. I also received, or this quarter, I mean, I have finished 3.
Okay.
I gained 3 and I finished 3.
Okay.
So I think we're at a total, of 13, but I'd have to double check the number. I'm not 100% certain. We also were served with an application for production of documents, unredacted documents. And so I I presented our position to the court on that. There is an order made for us to present some unredacted documents that were subject to an FOI, but now they will go as unredacted documents.
Yeah. Thank you. See no further questions. Oh, Councilor Dindrad, go ahead.
Sorry, I have been a little bit puzzled with the FOI's request. Just trying to understand, is this just something that Gibsons have to deal, or this is something that every single municipality has the same ratio? Do you know, corporate officer, sorry, through you, Mayor, but is it something, I would like to understand that.
Yeah, the SCRD are putting in a new position this coming year for an FOI coordinator because of the volume of FOI requests that they receive.
Okay.
And it's made easier for people to access that information, ask for information, but the volume of work on the other side to staff, I think you heard the Premier comment on that recently relative to the province. In fact, they're looking at putting a new administration fee in for FOI requests simply because of the volume of requests that they receive. So it is a growing challenge.
But maybe just on that topic, you mentioned SCRD, which is Sunshine Coast, but is there any comparison with, for example, whether Victoria, other cities, even in the Lower Mainland? Is there?
I'm not aware. Some of them report them. Some you can go online and see them in the reports, the numbers they receive. Some report a little bit more detail, almost like our correspondence report. They report not only the number they have, but the nature of the FOI requests.
Yeah, I would like to see this if possible. I don't want to give extra.
But it is I don't think we're unusual, but I think it's a it's a growth industry, FOI requests, and that's why it has to be managed internally. Yeah. Okay, seeing nothing else, thank you very much, Corporate Officer, and through you to our administrator and staff. We'll go now to the Infrastructure Services Department quarterly report, and a lot in here. I'll let Mr. Newman bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I'm not going to go through every item on the capital works, but I do want to bring your attention to a few items.
Thank you.
First off, you'll notice a number of projects note that they are being postponed or have not started due to staffing shortages. We typically have a fairly big workload anyway, but we lost our capital project coordinator and have yet to fill that position, although it is being advertised as we speak. But it's challenging with a small department to be able to backfill the required effort to when we do lose a person. Want to draw your attention to the second page of the report, where we've added the value-added staff initiatives, and it's just stuff that council may not be aware of, that happens behind the scenes a lot of times. You may be aware that the Inglis Bridge, the bridge crossing the upper reaches of Sharman Creek at the end of Inglis Road is now the town's. And so you can now cross over that bridge that used to be on private property to head over to the Mahan Trail. And staff worked very hard with the developer of Gospel Rock in order to secure the road dedication for the Shaw Inglis connector, which that bridge is now located within. The mention was already made about the emergency water supply to the SCRD, and our staff at the treatment plant did a great job of working with the RD staff, and a total of 5,000 cubic meters were delivered to the RD by the town. It was a great dry run, so to speak, and it did identify some improvements that the regional district could make to their system in order to increase the amount of water that they could receive from us. This Garrow Point Road parking may have flown under your radar as well. We shortened up the parking stalls on both sides of the road, on the just down kind of in front of the Pink House and on the opposite side of the road, and created one area for that we're yet to put a rack in for on-street bike parking, as well as 2 additional stalls on the opposite side of the road. The stalls still look huge, but we did shorten them down to an appropriate length. Aquifer mapping update. We expect that report during the first quarter of 2022. And I'm barely getting used to saying 2021. A lot of the information that we have collected through drilling programs, permitted drilling programs for geotechnical investigations by developers and so on, is being input into that model, into their model. And also they will be reviewing the assumptions and we'll be updating that based on data that is being collected annually through our monitoring program. Sliding down here to item 2.12, zone 3 well 6. So zone 3 well 6 pump. We've got the design completed for that. We are going out to tender for it, although we do not have our license granted yet. We are still optimistic that that will be occurring, but we are going to be able to make a decision of that once the tender closes, and this will be coming before council, and then council can make the decision as to whether to proceed with the construction, trusting that we are going to be getting that license for the expanded area. More on that to come. Going through, I'm not sure if I've got anything else here to mention or not, just scrolling. Item 8.4, pedestrian and cycle links. I will be reporting back to council on the Glassford Road closure, the traffic counts, as well as a couple of recommendations in regards to that closure. I'm hoping to have that for you next meeting in November. The Reed Road, the following item 8.5, Reed Road multi-use path west of Park, that is underway by the developer who is constructing part of it for the town and part of it as part of their frontage requirements. I think that is it for my section, which goes up to section 10. And I would, with your indulgence, pass this over to Michelle Lewis, who will take us through the natural and engineered asset management, and then on to Daniel. And before I forget, this will be Daniel's last time presenting a quarterly report. So I'm expecting big things out of him on this report.
Thank you. And before Michelle speaks, Council, is there any questions you have for Mr. Newman while he's in front of us? Councilor Diandrade.
Thank you, Mayor. It's just, I understand we are waiting for the ministry regarding the license, but does the director have any idea? Do they give you a timeline?
They say it's at the top of the pile. And the one thing that has occurred since our application has gone in is I understand that the Church Road well licensing has moved forward. So ours shouldn't be too far behind. We've had this discussion staff to staff with the regional district. The infrastructure that is required to bring their well online is more extensive than is required for well 6, I feel that with the timeline of tendering, providing we receive that license, that our well could potentially be online in time for summer 2022, in which case we could be in a position to deliver more water to the regional district, potentially also with less impact to the town. So we will be communicating that again to the ministry in an effort to expedite that license. But beyond, yes, it's top of a pile. No, we do not have any estimated timeline on that.
Thank you. Michelle, I'll let you go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beamish. So in Q3, we completed the Coastal Resilience Project. So that's 11.4 in the quarterly report. And this was a project that we were working with in partnership with the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative, where we were looking at the opportunities to enhance the long-term ability of our foreshore. Where am I here? The project helps staff understand the role of coastal infrastructure for providing protection against climate crisis, so like storm surges and sea level rise. And the deliverable from the project itself was to create a replicable model for other local governments to follow. So out of that, the pilot report was released in Q3, and then alongside that, they developed the Coastal Assets Protection Toolbox, which is available now for other municipalities to perform their own assessments of their foreshores. So the Coastal Resilience Project and the Source to Sea project, those are working, one is leading into the other, and the Source to Sea project is, we have just begun phase 2, where the background on the project itself was to establish a baseline inventory of the natural assets that support our drinking water services, to provide a condition assessment of the identified areas, to understand the levels of service of the identified natural assets, and to recommend best management practices of the natural assets identified. So in Q3, the phase 1 was completed, and the assessment on the watershed was performed, and that produced a condition assessment for all the forests, wetlands, and riparian areas within the watershed, which is the aquifer recharge area. And the project team, which was myself and in conversation with other staff members, as well as the team at the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative, we have begun identifying risks to the assets and prioritizing scenarios to model later in this phase. So if I can share my screen quickly, I just wanted to show you just one of the outputs from the project itself. Can you see this here? The
Yes.
The dashboard? Okay, so this is meant to be a dynamic dashboard that will be continually updated as the project goes along, and then also something that we can add to after the project completion. So right now, you'll see that there are actually sections missing, and that's just because we're in the, we've done the condition assessments, but just overlaying all the layers into the map itself is just continually being updated. So we can delineate it by forest, where it will show our canopy cover, which is information that we gained from our LiDAR imagery that we completed. And again, you can see that there are sections missing, and the reason being is to calibrate the model and to look at this different sensitivities based on size of forest or canopy cover. There's a big difference between, for example, for these areas up here, these polygons outside of town boundaries, as opposed to what we would be capturing within the town of Gibsons proper, where, you know, when we're wanting to be looking at street trees and individual parcels, at this point, the model hadn't been calibrated to be able to pick up on that. So that will be that will be updated in this next phase. And again, this shows us our forest area by condition. So like you'll see here in this graph that it's showing the percentage of high, as in good condition, medium condition, and low. And those determinations were made based on adjacent land use. So if we're talking again about a forested area, so it would be if there's any major roads running through, if they are adjacent to another parcel, a forested parcel, or if it's adjacent to, depending on what zoning is in place on the parcels adjacent. So we've got riparian as well. And these are polygons and shapefiles that we already had in our mapping system. And so you can see here, if I zoom in, that this shapefile for the riparian area for Sharman Creek is incomplete because as we all know, that Sharman Creek goes all the way to the ocean. So that's something we're just working out the bugs in. But again, like I said at the beginning, that this is dynamic and it's meant to be added to and updated continually. And the interesting thing about this dashboard itself is that when they produced it in its initial phase, it showed it was a way for staff to determine what data gaps we have and where we are wanting more information. And then it just helps us, make decisions about our intent for the project itself based on what we have and what we're wanting to see. So this is something that I'll be sharing with you later on as the project progresses, just to show you what we've come out of it, or what has come out of it. And then the next layer that will be added to the dashboard itself will be the risk analysis, which is, like I had mentioned earlier, that's the phase where we're in right now. And so there will be an additional tab in this dashboard that will, when you click on it, it will show you all of the assets, and it will all the natural assets, and then it will show you the risks that we have determined for those assets. And then the risks itself will be things like deforestation, erosion, drought, invasive species, illegal dumping of green waste. And so that will be added in this phase. And then the anticipated work for Q4 would be, where am I? I can stop sharing my screen. The next phase would be modeling or determining which scenarios we're wanting to model based on the condition we know we have performed on the assets and the risks that we've identified. And so then we can look at, if we were to log all of Mount Elphinstone, what would that mean to the rest of the town downstream, and what would the impacts be to our natural assets? And then also, if we were to take away the stormwater capacity for those trees, then what size stormwater pond would we have to build in its place, and to what cost? So this project itself feeds into other projects like the aquifer mapping update, as well as being fed into by projects such as 11.7, which was the Sharman Creek assessment, and also the 11.6, which is the surface water, the creek monitoring. So that's giving us information about creek flows, velocity, temperature, as well as benthic invertebrate sampling, just to determine the health of our creeks. And the next one I will talk about, I'm happy to answer any questions if you're wanting to jump in now, or I'll continue to the White Tower Pond construction.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. Do you have any questions at this time, Michelle? Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. This is amazing. All this project. Really happy to see all this this data collected, right, and be able to put together and visualize. So a few questions. The Coastal Resilience Project is ready. Is Council going to receive the report?
I'm not sure if it was added to a council reading file. I know that Elizabeth has it and it should be on our website.
Okay. And
Sorry, I'll just add that because it was under an agreement with Municipal Natural Assets Initiative. They were going to do a project launch, and so we were just making sure that the communication was in line with when they were putting it out.
But you mentioned you can see on the website, right?
I believe Elizabeth has the information, so I'd have to check with her to see if it's live.
So the source to see, we have now the natural asset inventory. Are these all these resources, the ortho photos, the surface water monitoring, and actually also the Charmant Creek assessment, the environmental assessment report? Are anyone able to see this online? Is it something that, I know municipalities post, many municipalities have their sensitive inventory, sensitive lands inventory online. Surrey has a very encompassing. Is it a plan that all this material will be online?
If I may, the ortho photos themselves, those are for our internal GIS mapping system. So what is public right now, I believe, is through the SCRD mapping. I'm not sure if we don't have an external mapping system that we would use that would show the photos. So they're used for us to determine changes on properties, and we also have the oblique imagery, which means, our traditional ortho photos are from top down, but now we have the oblique, which is taken from on an angle. So we can actually, within our mapping system, we can measure heights of trees and we can measure heights of buildings to like a really high degree of accuracy.
Okay.
And then the Charmant Creek assessment report that you alluded to, that is not completed yet. We should be getting that within Q4. And I don't think I can speak to whether or not that's going to be public. I would have to defer to Director Newman on that.
But if I may, Mayor, it will be great if council can have access to these reports, right away when it comes, because I wasn't aware, for example, that the coastal resilience project has been completed, and I appreciate obviously this report, the report that you provided now, it's really complete, it's really appreciated, but it would be nice to have all these materials when they come forward, if it's possible.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing right now are quarterly reports as opposed to final reports, and I anticipate that any report that we do, we will be able to publish on our system in the future. So, Councilor Director Newman.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor Beamish. And we are also, although we don't have a timeline at this point, we are also looking at the possibility of providing more mapping information to be accessed by the public. Obviously, costs associated with that, but that is something that is in our plan, I suppose.
Michelle, I look forward to also seeing some of this tomorrow in your presentation. Thank you. And you wanted to carry on, sorry.
Sure, I just wanted to give a quick update on the White Tower Pond expansion. I'm sure you're all aware that an archaeological find was discovered on the first day of construction of the stormwater detention pond. So at this point, a stop work order is in place, and we have begun the permitting process with the province and the Squamish Nation. And our next steps are to await the permits, which could be upwards of 3 to 4 months, the process. And then once those permits are in place, then we would begin with archaeological monitoring of any excavation work that's happening.
How is that affecting the tender, the contractor that we tendered with? Are they able to accommodate that change?
I think I'll defer to Dave on this.
At this point, they are still honoring their contract, and we're staying in communication with them as far as anticipated timelines. And they are aware that it will be a few months before they are able to mobilize again to site. But so far, eager to work with us and to see that project to completion.
Thank you. Okay, Michelle, did you have anything else?
Maybe I could just mention one last one. This is a new project, a pilot project that is fully funded by the Municipal Natural Assets Initiative. And it's section 11.11, and it's developing levels of service for natural assets and ecosystem services. So 7, actually, I believe the number has gone up to 10. Local governments and 1 conservation authority across Canada have signed on to this pilot project. And we're finding that the complexity when trying to develop levels of service for natural assets is that they provide so many benefits and co-benefits that it's very difficult to identify a single, or to identify a level of service. So we have had 3 workshops so far, and I believe we'll have 3 more. And the project itself is to wrap up because it was grant funded for the MNAI, and it's expected to wrap up in Q4. So again, we'll share that as soon as I get that report. And that's it for me.
And did I understand that you are presenting in or participating with the Glasgow conference?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And what did you present?
We were talking, or I was talking about low carbon resilience in corporate strategy on behalf of NANI.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, be interested in that experience. So I think we need to move on. We're cutting our dinner hours short, Council. So we'll go down to Mr. Tardif on operations.
Don't worry, I'll keep it short.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'll go fast. Item 11.12 is sanitary and drainage inspection. So we're preparing the tender documents for this. This is where we're sending cameras inside the pipes to look for defects and stuff. A couple of weeks ago during the big storm, rainstorm, we had a lot of water experience at the plant, at the wastewater treatment plant, and that's all coming from defectuous piping that has either roots or cracks or they're damaged. So this work is important. And from last year we didn't do any, in part because of the short time frame we had, but also so we carried the funding over to this year. So this year we're going to do a major inspection job. So that's one thing. And then we've been working and are still working on the odor control project at the wastewater treatment plant. And interestingly, we're also doing working in collaboration with the District of Sechelt. Not that they have odor issues, but they actually have some instruments that we can use to help ourselves. So this is working well. So we're having good working relationship with the SCRD, good working relationship with the wastewater treatment plant in Sechelt. So that's all good, I think. We're also paying special attention to the centrifuge at the wastewater treatment plant, which is getting in worse shape as time goes on, and that will need replacement in the near future. Most likely towards the end of next year or the year after, early in 2023. You probably noticed we were able to do all the pavement markings at the end of September, and the street sweeping as well. Last Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there was a lot on the roads, so that's all taken care of now. We also managed to find a local company that does graffiti removal. So we've started doing that this year. There's quite a few more to remove in town, but that's going to be part of our regular maintenance. We purchased some new bear-proof cans, and they will be, well, we got 5 of them. They'll be scattered at the trailheads where we find bear activity. And we also have some metal town style garbage bins that are currently at those trailheads, and we'll move them like in Lower Gibsons here at the, in Wine Garden, I guess there's been sighting of bears there. You probably noticed the Christmas lights are up now, and we're going to be removing the Armour's beach floats in the next week or so. We're all prepping for the snow and salting season, snow plowing and salting, both in parks for the sidewalks and public works for the roads. We were able to move the Persephone to the public works yard, and it will be awaiting impatiently for funding to come and fix it. And this is the end of my stay with you guys. It was a pleasure to present this every quarter. Anyway. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'm here ready to answer your questions.
No questions. Will you stay? Can you stay longer?
No.
No. Okay.
I was given an ultimatum, you know, so.
Yeah. I understand those. I was given one too, and it was to stay home.
Yeah, I know.
So now I'm home, but.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Questions, questions, Mr. Tardif. Councilor Ludwig.
No questions. I just wanted to say thank you for
You're welcome.
your service. It's been so great to work with you. We're sad to see you go. So you look far too giddy and happy to be leaving by
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Crowell.
I just wanted to thank Daniel and Tyler Musgrove for coordinating the Persephone move. It went incredibly well. There was really good staff for, I think staff were out at 4 o'clock in the morning putting up barricades to prevent people from parking and traffic control. So the whole thing went, incredibly well. So kudos and thanks to everyone.
Yeah, no, we were very nervous. Tyler was extremely nervous.
Yeah.
Thinking that it might collapse, but it was good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Daniel, I really appreciate it as well, and I know I've seen how you and others of your staff drive around the community looking at things and just checking out to see before storm events, before fall, making sure things are ready to receive the water, and that's very important. And anticipating the seasons is a significant challenge. So I really appreciate that your foresight in doing that and all the things you do there. So, and you're not gone yet. We will have time yet to say goodbye, and we will do that. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Council, I don't want to cut the Director of Planning short. We have 2 more reports on this agenda package. What's Council's wishes? Do you want to carry on with those? Do you want to look to bring those forward to a next meeting? You've had a chance to read them. So I guess I would say to you, are there any issues in those reports that you would like to ask questions on right now? The important thing is that the staff have taken time to prepare the reports for you. You have had a chance to look at them. I'm quite happy to bring them back to the next agenda for further discussion of them, if that's what council wishes at this time. But knowing that we're at 5:10 now, and we've got to be back here at we're ready for a meeting at 6:45. So, Councilor Dindrat.
Yeah, Mayor, I appreciate. I read, but I think it's always good to have the director present. We can interact, and I think this is a very important. It's their work, right? And it's us, and also the attendees. They can also better understand. So, yeah, I would prefer to have it back if possible.
You make a motion then to defer the last 2 reports to the next committee of the whole meeting?
Yes, thank you.
Councilor Dindrat, moved by, seconded by Councilor Lumley. And Director of Planning, there's no reflection on the work you guys are doing. We really recognize that, but it's a reflection on the time of the day. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Deferring that to the next committee of the whole meeting. Thank you. And so we'll come back and prepare to discuss it then. And the Ocean Watch report is another one that's an important report, but that is also being put forward. So thank you very much. And we'll go to inquiries. I don't know if there's anybody out there watching us at this time of the afternoon. Attendees, yes, there are. Yeah, so we'll go to inquiries. Corporate officer.
Yes, if anyone has any questions for council, please raise your hand. I see no hands raised, Mayor Beamish.
Thank you very much. And we will move forward then, and motion to adjourn. Councillor Didrad, Councillor Crowell, all in favor? Okay, we'll see you back here for 7 o'clock meeting. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody for your participation today. And I'm sorry if we didn't get to you. I know, Sue, you were dying to talk about the, Halloween and things, but we'll do that next time. Okay, all the best. We'll talk to you guys later. Thank you.